The No Nonsense Roundtable, a weekly radio show and podcast where host Dom Genova interviews guests from all walks of life, all with amazing stories to tell. And now, here's your host, Dom Genova.
Well, welcome everybody to another edition of your No Nonsense Roundtable. Of course, I'm Dom Genova, and I am away on an assignment today at the University of Notre Dame. We've been here for a week. We saw last week's game, and they're 0-2. So everybody here is a little glum about that. But behind me is what they call Touchdown Jesus. My attempt to give you a little bit of an idea of what the campus is like and how wonderful it is. The show last week was our first show. This is our second coming this week, and I have a couple of really interesting people for you. One is Jerry Elman, and Jerry Elman wrote a book about the Holocaust, and more accurately, his family was in the Holocaust, his mom and dad, and it's a different type of Holocaust story. His YouTube that I did with him has gotten 40,000 views, well, 37,800 views on YouTube, and you can see that at any time. But he discusses the book here. And it's a different type of Holocaust story, because his father snuck out of the ghetto to go fight the Nazis in Poland. Quite an extraordinary story. And the other fellow that I have on the show today is Jack Foyd. Jack Foyd is a veteran. He fought in the Battle of the Bulge, and his story is just absolutely amazing, what he went through and how he feels about today. And he has a lot of great insight. And that's another show that we did, and that's in the bank too. So you could go to YouTube, go to my YouTube channel, and if you, I'm right in the middle. These kids are great because I'm right in the middle of their sidewalk, and they're kind enough to walk around me. So they're looking at some old guy with a contraption here, and I guess the classes must be done for the day. So with that, enjoy the show. No, it's always on YouTube. If you want to see it, you want to see the repeat of it, there's visuals there. And this is all done, as you know, commercial free now. So, and of course, at the end, I'll have a little advice on how to buy a car and the news from Middle Finger Lake. So enjoy.
This is Dom Genova, host of the No Nonsense Roundtable. Recently, I interviewed a good friend of mine who wrote a book about his family's experience as Holocaust survivors. His name is Jerry Elman, and he lives in the Rochester area. In his book, he tells the untold story of Jewish resistance, the struggle after liberation, and how the horror has affected his family for multiple generations right down to this day. Sometimes the spoken word doesn't do a story justice, so we created this YouTube from the radio show and added pictures, many from Jerry's own family dating back to the 1930s. Please take the time to view the entire YouTube, and we ask you to like and share. It's a story that needs to be shared. And please understand, some of these pictures may be disturbing to you. Jerry, how long have you and I known each other? It's got to be, 15 years?
It goes back a while, to at least like 2011, I think.
Something like that.
Yeah.
And he's a former employee of Kodak, a former business owner himself. But that's not really what we're here to talk about. We're here to talk about this book that Jerry's written, and the book is a fantastic book. It's called The Miracles Through Hell. It's a true story of Holocaust survival and intergenerational healing. A wonderful, wonderful book, and we're going to get into the book in just a second. But first, I think we should talk about us.
Yeah.
We're like best buds, right?
Yes, we are.
Yeah. So you work for Kodak. You were an engineer for Kodak. Started a business in the car business. Yep. And why don't you tell a little bit about that, and then we'll talk about the day we met.
Yeah, well, when I parted ways with Kodak, I decided to pursue passion and bought a car business just before the economic crash of 2008.
Great timing.
It was perfect, for the person I bought from. But we wrote it out and made it through that. with a focus on ethics and customer service, and doing what's right for the customer. And that's kind of how you and I connected, because I discovered that you were doing the same thing.
Well, I mean, it goes beyond that. You won an Effie Award yourself, and you were on the committee for that, right, at the time? And
I won.
And then,
I won the award, and then I joined the board and got into involved with the organization. Yeah.
And being a radio listener, I guess it was one of my ads or something that piqued your interest.
Yes. Yeah, several of your ads, actually, hearing you on the radio and seeing your print ads on the paper every weekend. I said, I got to find out who this guy is.
And if I was just full of it or not. I think part of it was like, am I real, or is this guy just full of crap? Right.
Yeah, because I was like, this guy tells it like it is.
Or he's the biggest phony in the world.
Right.
That's great. So, well, I made a lot of money making fun of a lot of other dealers. Not all dealers, but some. It's like tent sales. If moving my cars 3 miles down the road makes them cheaper, if I sent it to Schenectady, they'd be half price, right?
Yeah. And I finally remember the years when you showed the little 10 by 10 tent, and said, I'm going to spend the money by donating them to the Boy Scouts who could actually use
tents, right. And the ad was little tent, little prices,
right?
Yeah. So that's how Jerry and I got to know each other, and then beyond that, we kind of have the same operating system, right? Mm-hmm. People either get it or they don't get it. We talk about ethics all the time. We talk about how you treat people, and one of the things people say, you treat people the way they want to be, the way you want to be treated. But you really treat people the way they want to be treated, and you take care of people. And when you do that, you find that people are loyal to you, and they buy things from you, or they listen to you on the radio,
mm-hmm.
and that's what we are, and that's how we are. And there's some things that you just do for the sake of it. And I had no idea that you were writing this book, and I know you didn't write this book to make money. You wrote this book because it is a testament to your family, your family's life, a wonderful book that works on a number of different levels. And let's start talking about the book itself. Again, I'm going to give the title probably 12 times during this show because it's really important. It's called Miracles Through Hell, and by Jerry Elman. And let's start. What compelled you to start writing this book, and when did you write it?
Well, it was a process over a number of years that, both my brother and I, growing up, never really knew my parents' story. They didn't really talk much about it. And, when we asked questions, we didn't get much in terms of answers. They didn't really want to talk about it. And when my father in particular passed away, he left some records and files and things, but they were all in Yiddish. And most of the documentation that existed was in Yiddish. And but my brother and I, at one point in the mid-'70s, had asked my father to translate some of it, but he just didn't want to. It was either too painful, or he just didn't want us to share the pain that they went through. But it always haunted me. That I wanted to know their story. And it was after I retired and I was going through some of my parents' stuff that I decided that I had to start to pursue it. So it was last summer. So
I guess your father had kept quite extensive journals on a lot of the stuff he went through. Your mother too? Or?
No, my mother didn't keep any records. It was a different experience for each of them. My mother came out of the war and the Holocaust very angry and bitter. If she did talk about it, it was out of anger, hurt, and bitterness. And my father was more, philosophical. He would talk to me about life's learnings and more try to shape my character out of it. But neither one of them would give specifics. My father's journal was published, written in Yiddish, and was published in a memorial book on his village in Yiddish. So I had that book for years, but I couldn't read it or understand it. And so part of the challenge was getting it translated. That was one of the early parts of doing this.
And so reading the book, it operates on a number of different levels. Most people, when we think of the Holocaust, we think of Jewish people being dragged off to extermination camps, and that's pretty much the story, one way or another. But this is so educational, and it's so enlightening, and it tells a story of that, yes, but also the partisans and the activities that the Jewish people who resisted, took up arms, defended themselves, went out into the forest. Very, very much like it's almost analogous to this Ukraine situation we have now.
Yeah, very much so. Yeah, I understood things kind of the way you just described them. I mean, I knew my parents were Holocaust survivors. I knew my father was an organizer involved with the partisans, but it was all still abstract to me. I didn't understand, what part a partisan was. The Holocaust was more, a historical thing that my parents were part of, but it wasn't personal. I didn't feel a personal connection to it. And I had the same perception that, what we see on, documentaries and movies and books are the pictures of Jews, marching off the trains into the past.
A very unidimensional picture. Well, we're about ready to head to a break. We're going to pick up this thought on the other side. Well, welcome back. You're listening to No Nonsense Roundtable. I'm here with one of my very best friends, Jerry Elman, and he's just written this book, Miracles Through Hell. And on the cover of the book, it says, The True Story of Holocaust Survival and Intergenerational Healing. And it's really beyond that. I mean, this is about a story of your family from before the Holocaust, through the Holocaust, surviving the Holocaust, coming to America, and your personal story and the way that this has affected you personally and your family personally. It's a very, very compelling book, Jerry.
Well, thanks. As I started this project, I wasn't intending to write a book. And what I wanted to do is discover my family story and my roots that my parents came from, and understand what their experiences that they never really shared or talk about. And as I wrote, it evolved into a book. Mm-hmm. But as you said earlier, this was never about money or fame. It was about, first, for me and my family, and then second, my aim is to share this story with as many people as I can, because history repeats itself, as we're seeing today with Russia and Ukraine. The other thing is that I've read numerous Holocaust books, and I've read books written by survivors, and most of the books will talk about the events and the circumstances, but most of them still avoid the emotions and feelings. And that was part of what I was trying to uncover, And what I realized as I was doing that, it started exposing my own feelings and my own emotions. And I've had my own issues. I've had my own demons growing up that I've never understood. And this was a journey of learning my parents' experiences, which I had no clue, and then understanding how their emotions and their feelings and their pain ultimately impacted me and my brother. And what I also uncovered, this reconnected me with cousins and other family members that I'd lost touch with, was that most of us that we call ourselves second generation, the children of survivors, carry baggage from our parents. I mean, not deliberate, but
yes.
As my cousins and other friends told me that this is what they went through and felt also, and we all thought we were alone.
Right.
With our feelings and our fears. And, I even grew up and still sometimes have nightmares that I have no understanding or clue why or where they come from. But now I do.
Yeah, I absolutely get this from your book. Something that happened in 1939 is affecting you and your family now. And so I look at, I read your book. I put into, there's 3 silos here, and there's something to be learned from each of these silos. One is there's a historic perspective that I didn't know about. You're talking about the ghettos and the Jews that were assigned to run the ghettos and what they were responsible for, and that whole dynamic, which I was totally clueless about. There's the partisans that went into the woods and fought. So there's a historic portion of this book, and we'll get into that. But there's also this humanity story about the way people conducted themselves and their standards and erosions of standards and people who held their standards. And then there's the part that you're just talking about now, the psychological part of this that has been handed down from generation to generation that you had no clue. Something happened in 1940, 1942, and it's having an effect on you and your family now and the way you view your life. And so let's break it down in those categories, if you would. If anything else you want to contribute to that or think we should go, let me know. Okay. But let's talk about the historic part of this first. Tell us about the ghettos, the people around the ghettos. Tell us about the partisans. Tell me the things that we don't know about people who either resisted, why they didn't resist, what they did, and that whole historical aspect. Yeah.
Well, everything the Germans and the Nazis did was, methodical and, very organized and very efficient. And, what they did is, when they conquered cities and towns, initially in Poland, and then later when they invaded, Russia, 1941, the same thing happened, and my parents were caught on the Russian side, and the Germans would gather the Jews up, using public records, and also, people would turn them in, and then force them to live in these areas called ghettos. And what they would do is squeeze a part of the town or city into a smaller area. Usually it was the existing Jewish area, but they would squeeze it and then put a fence or a wall around it. and force Jews had to live with each other. I mean, those that didn't, their homes were outside the ghetto had to move into the ghetto and live with other families. Bedrooms were shared with multiple families. They had to stay there. And those were kind of the holding grounds. They were held there until later, the term liquidation is when those ghettos were emptied and everyone was put on trains to the death camps. But those ghettos, the Germans allowed the Jews to administer the ghettos, the daily government stuff, so it was very efficient for the Jews, but they also had to create an underground economy because the Germans were deliberately trying to starve them with limited amounts of food. And what the Jewish administration would do, and the term for that was called Judenrat, which is Jewish. The leaders were trying to do the best they could for the Jewish life in a bad situation. And they came up with a system of a black market and bribes, and using their ingenuity to either bribe for food and supplies or trade and smuggle things in so that the Jewish population could have enough food and make the best of it.
And what I learned from the book, and correct me if I'm wrong, is that the people that were running the ghettos were not conniving. They were trying to adapt a system that would help the people.
Yeah, exactly.
Without causing so much trouble as retribution. Exactly,
and there's a little bit of a myth because some people have. There's this image of these Judenrat leaders of being selfish and corrupt and doing what's best for themselves, but there's a distinction that these were honorable people trying to do the best they could, and often there's a comparison with the death camps. Like if you went to Auschwitz, the leaders there, the Jewish leaders were connivers, helping the Nazis, but not in the ghettos.
Well, Jerry, we're into a hard break, and we're going to have to see everybody after the break.
Okay.
Well, welcome back. You're listening to the No Nonsense Roundtable. I'm Dom Genova, your host, here with one of my very best friends, Jerry Elman. Just wrote a book, Miracles Through Hell, a true story of Holocaust survival and intergenerational healing. And the fascinating thing about this book, it talks about the Holocaust and brings us through the Holocaust to post-Holocaust and how it affects him and his family today. Jerry, we were talking before the break about the ghettos, and the ghettos eventually, the intention by the Germans was to liquidate the ghettos and send the people in the ghettos to the death camp. And at some point in time when that happens, people have a choice to make. I mean, they have to kind of go away with the plan that the Germans have. It'd be put on rail cars and taken to death camps like Auschwitz, or resist. And you have a wonderful story about your dad and the resistance.
Yeah. But what you described is exactly what happened, and it was a no-win choice because they viewed either decision would lead to death. My father and uncle and others who chose to go to the woods and flee and fight did so because they wanted to control their death, that they would die on their terms, not on Hitler's terms. It was an act of defiance, really, more than bravery. So they fled. They cut one night. They cut as the ghetto was being liquidated. A group of 8 cut the wires in the fence perimeter and snuck out in a blizzard. They were shot at while they were running, but no one was injured, and they were in the woods, and they were supposed to link up with another earlier organized group that was going to train them and help them get settled in there, and that group didn't show up. So my father and the group of 8 were there having no clue what to do or how to survive in the woods. But they learned. The first thing after a few weeks, they said, we have to get food. We have to start fending for ourselves. And so they learned the art of survival. They did later link up with other partisan groups who brought them in and trained them. And I had this perception that partisans were just this ragtag, unorganized group of people scattered throughout the woods that, fought, but I didn't know or understand the impact that they had. So, my father and uncle were part of a larger group of about 25,000 Jews did flee to the forest and became partisan fighters. Most of them joined up with organized Russian partisan fighters. Russian partisans were soldiers who got caught behind German lines when the Germans retreated, and they couldn't get back to their... So they formed resistance groups. And then the Jews caught up with them. Because there was a lot of anti-Semitism among different communities, the Jews felt Stalin had actually issued an order because he recognized the importance of the partisans. He actually had them organized as military units, and later they actually drop-shipped supplies from airplanes and stuff, and they were trained. But he had ordered that Jews were important fighters and no harm should become of them. The anti-Semitism would not be accepted. With other groups, non-Russian, there was a danger to Jews that many were killed because of anti-Semitism in these other groups.
In other words, you could be joining up with a group which would be just as dangerous for you as meeting a German.
Exactly, because there was that common hatred. So the impact of the 25,000 Jews and about 450,000 Russian partisans became this incredible fighting force that collectively destroyed. They blew up bridges, communication lines, trains, transports, and they would attack from the woods, do their mission, and then retreat to the woods. And the woods was their friend because the Germans couldn't bring tanks and heavy equipment in. And if the Germans came in after them, they were hiding behind the trees, and they could easily ambush the Germans. So Germans became terrified of the forests. They wouldn't go near them because 100 of them would get taken down like nothing by the partisans. In fact, some stories say that the Germans not only feared the partisans, but they feared looking at the trees because they didn't know who was behind them. So that was why it worked. In fact, in this particular area, the partisan units form predominantly around where the forests exist. That's why we didn't see much partisan movement in Western Europe, because there were no forests to hide in. So they destroyed about 30 to 40% of the German supply chain to the Russian front. So they had a major impact on the outcome of the war, and it's said that Hitler had to divert 2 to 3 divisions from the Russian front to try to fight the partisans. And again, this was the collective, Russian Jewish effort. So, when I learned all this, I was just astonished at the impact. Now, when you talk to people who were in the partisans, like my father and uncle, they always said we were not brave, we were not heroes. Don't call us that. So we made a decision. We made a decision to abandon our families, knowing that they were going to, face death. But they said we also knew that if we joined them, that we would face death. There was no right or wrong answer. And, they carried that guilt with them the rest of their life.
Survivor's guilt.
The survivor's guilt with them that, they made it. But again, their expectation was that they were going to die too. They didn't do it.
There are two awful choices.
Right. So, that's their story. And then, my mother's story is different because one of the learnings out of this is if people know each other,
right,
it breaks down barriers. My grandfather, my mother's father, was a leather trader who did a lot of business with Polish farmers and became good friends with them.
And that helped.
That helped because several of them hid them and protected them.
Fascinating story. And we're heading into a break, and we'll see you at the other side. Well, welcome back. You're listening to the No Nonsense Roundtable. Our guest this week is Jerry Elman, a good friend of mine. Wrote a book, just came out, Miracles Through Hell, a true story of Holocaust survival and intergenerational healing. Available on Amazon. Wonderful book. I would recommend that everybody reads Jerry's book. And before the break, we were talking about your dad and his experience working as a partisan and battling the Germans. Now, your mother survived the Holocaust too, but in a different way. Let's talk about her experience.
Yeah, my mother's family survived in hiding. She had a younger brother who early on, when the ghetto was formed, was taken away to a labor camp, and then never saw him again. So it was my mother, her sisters, her two sisters, and her parents were taken in by a Polish farmer and were hidden in a barn for 17 months. And then at that point, it became too risky and unsafe for the farmer and them to have them stay there. So they left and hid in corn and wheat farms, in the
bins, right?
Well, in the bins and in the maze of crops it's themselves. For the last few months, they were living outdoors? Outdoors in the cornfield, hiding in cornfields and wheat fields. And then the Russians finally liberated that area. And, she was 14 when all of this started. She was quite a few years younger than my father. So, the impact on her psychologically was a lot more severe than my father. The pain of hiding and the fear of getting discovered. The partisans, they were fighting every day. Their focus was on that. They had a little bit more closure to
understandable.
The things. One of the things that none of these people ever got the opportunity to say goodbye to their relatives that went to the camps. And have closure. Of what happened to them. There's no graves. There was no period of mourning. Any of that. So that my mother was greatly affected by that, and my father and mother met after liberation. Unfortunately, there was still quite a bit of anti-Semitism in Poland, and there, because the Jews were returning, a number of Poles were angry because they had taken over Jewish houses and property and didn't want to give it back. And then there were those that said, they supported the final solution and said, we thought the Jews were gone. We need to finish the job. So there was, there's a term. It's a Russian term it's called pogrom, where there's an organized attack against Jews. And for people who've seen Fiddler on the Roof,
yes,
there's an example of a pogrom when they all had to leave and move. So 21 survivors made it back to my mother's village, and they had 6 months later, they had a celebration for a number. There was someone getting married, a number of people returned, a child who was given to Polish family to save during the war and the Holocaust was brought back to, the parents were killed, but an aunt was taking the child in. And there was an attack that evening on the party. A number of people attacked with machine guns, and 7 of the survivors were killed.
And this is after the liberation. So there's a group of rebels, bandits, thieves, whatever.
Yeah, they're
hoodlums. Yeah,
hoodlums and bandits. And these pogroms were having a number of places. So the Jews of my mother's village went to the city of Bialystok, north of there, for safety, and that's where my father was after he was liberated, and my father became part of a police force to protect Jews, and that's how they met.
Yeah. So even emigrating to the United States wasn't easy.
No.
I mean, there's stories in there about the roadblocks that were put in front of the people that wanted to come here.
Yeah. It was difficult. And then the reason my parents came to the United States, and actually they came to Syracuse, New York, was because my father had an uncle and several aunts that came to Syracuse before the war. A number of people left Europe, in the early 1900s, and that was the case here. So they were sponsors to bring my father and uncle and mother here. They had to travel to Munich to get into a American DP displaced person camp in order to be eligible to be declared refugees.
Yeah, and you're feeling the effects of this through your life. I mean, these days you would call it PTSD that somebody experienced, and that gets passed on a lot of times from generation to generation. And you've felt that, and it's clear in this book.
Yeah, I suffered through depression, starting when I was a teenager, and I never understood it, and my parents kept their feelings to themselves.
Right.
I mean, locked, and I learned to do the same thing. I learned to be, my facade was always happy and everything was fine, but deep down I was struggling. My mother in particular suffered deep depression that I didn't know, I didn't understand. And so I write about that because, over time, we were able to reconcile our relationship, and I learned a lot, and it actually freed me. Writing this book and learning the story freed me from a lot of the stress and anguish that I never understood. PTSD driven, it gets passed on to the next generation.
If there's one thing you want people to bring back from reading this book, what would it be?
It would be that history repeats itself. I mean, one of the things my father taught me lessons, and he told me hate never goes away, it just goes undercover. And that when hate and power come together, he basically told me when these atrocities happen when the haters gain power. And and we're seeing that in Ukraine today. I mean, what I've learned from the Holocaust can be applied to exactly what we see in Ukraine today.
Well, Jerry, it's been delightful having you here. I learned so much from reading your book. Again, everybody, Miracles Through Hell, available on Amazon. Story of Holocaust, and beyond that, it's educational in so many different ways, and it touches your heart. And Jerry, you've been a good friend of mine for all these years, and God bless you for writing this book. And everybody, next week at 10 to 11, same place, same time, the No Nonsense Roundtable. We hope that you now know a bit more about the Holocaust. And again, we would appreciate it if you would like and share the YouTube. If you'd like to buy Jerry's book, it can be bought on Amazon. But better yet, log on to jerry-elman.com, where you can find out more about Jerry, contact Jerry, or buy his book. Thanks for watching.
This week's update from the town of Middle Finger Lake. Middle Finger Lake's radical far center political party for the Know Nothings held their convention last week at the Perpetual Anxiety Megachurch. Instead of foam hands showing an index finger as "We're number one" to celebrate the Middle Finger Lake, foam hands were distributed to all attendees using the middle finger. The crowd was stoked to give rousing cheers at poignant moments of the speeches, holding up the middle finger fingers. Failing to collect all of these foam hands on exit, some of them made it to the general public, and a near riot broke out when the high school football team came out of the stadium doors, waving the foam fingers for all the crowd to see. The game was paused. The fingers were collected, and the middle finger milkers were defeated by a score of 97-3. This is Justine P. reporting from the Middle Finger Lake studio in the town of Middle Finger Lake.
In case you're a little concerned with the quality of these intermittent broadcasts that I have on this show, I am doing some of this from sitting on the campus of the University of Notre Dame, and there's wonderful students that are enjoying a beautiful, warm afternoon, and that's why. And one thing I said at the beginning of the show is that we have no commercials, and we have no commercials so we can do something that is better than commercials, and that is using the time we would have had in commercials to honor a veteran, which we are going to do right now. His name is Jack Foy. He was in Patton's Army. He is all-American through and through, and he's a fascinating fella. And I am proud that I was able to interview him last year. This is just a 9-minute segment of that, but you can get the entire interview if you go to nononsenseroundtable.com. Oh, if you're looking at this on the YouTube, there's a baby in a carriage, and oh, look at that. Well, welcome to another edition of the No Nonsense Roundtable. I'm Dom Genova, your host, every Saturday right here. And like I'd like to remind you, all the past shows are on nononsenseroundtable.com. And today I have somebody who was a guest just a short while ago with me, but he's here to, just kind of be my what would you call it? My safety net, wingman.
There we go.
That's a good way to say it. Good wingman. On an interview we're doing with a very extraordinary individual, and his name is Christian Garzon, and you might remember him from his stint with Channel 8 News, and he's working for the Veterans Outreach Center now, and he suggested that this gentleman would make a good guest for us, and he certainly is a great guest. And let me have you introduce the gentleman.
Sure. Dom, thanks for having me back again. I really appreciate this opportunity. Mr. Jack Foy, Gentleman Jack Foy, World War II veteran. I interviewed him during my days at Channel 8. He reached out to local media because he gave a speech during D-Day. I think it was last year or the year prior, and no local media really covered it. So he reached out, and I said, wow, this guy's giving this incredible speech in Normandy. This is an incredible sound. We had a phone conversation. I sat down with him at his home in Greece. And, you know, with local news, you have to cut so much out. There's so much material here. There's so much of a wonderful story to tell. And just God bless this man. And thank you, Jack, for your service. Here, just buckle up. This is a wonderful story. Mr. Foy, I want to just say thank you for joining us on the No Nonsense Roundtable. Good morning, sir.
Thank you. Good morning, sir. Good morning.
Tell us about where you grew up, sir. It was the Charlotte area, correct?
Yes, I grew up right down by the lake in Charlotte. I was about the middle child of a large family. There were 10 kids in our family.
Woo.
Wow.
But that was, you say, woo, but that wasn't very unusual at that time. See, this was back in 1925. Mm-hmm. The Depression was just getting ready to start. And large families were very, very common. Very common. Perhaps not 10, but 7 and 8 were not unusual at all.
Yeah, there were 11 in my dad's family. Yeah, I he was born in 1910. So I can well think about that time. Sure.
Yeah, a lot of my dad had 6 brothers and sisters.
Yeah,
he was born in 1950. But when you decided to join to serve during World War II, you said you were about 18 years old or whatever. It was November of 44?
No, I was younger than that. I was 17.
17, there we go.
In fact, I had to get a special permission to join. They had what they call the ASTP, Army Specialized Training Program, which was starting to send, well, quite frankly, you had to have a few smarts. Pretty well up on the education class. But they're going to send us to college, supposed to go for 2 years, complete the 4-year college course in 2 years and get a commission in the Army Engineers. I was selected to go to Cornell University, and in 4 months there, that was my first time away from home. Now it's not unusual to have little kids say, well, I'm going to New York next week, or I'm going to Chicago, going down south, going almost any place. But back then, if you took a trip from here to Niagara Falls, boy, that was a big trip and something you talked about all year.
For sure. And then, with the college stint, you served over in Europe when you eventually joined the military. So you talk about taking a big trip at 17, 18 years old over to Europe. You served, I didn't mean to spoil it all, but you served in Patton's army, correct?
Yes, yeah. I was a frontline machine gunner in General George Patton's army.
Well, the world was...
My job was killing Germans. I did a lot of it.
So did you join after December 7th, or were you in the army before that? Or
no, I joined when in high school. The recruiters for the Army came around to the high schools at that time. This was in 43.
Okay.
When I graduated from high school, and I took the test maybe 3 or 4 months before I graduated, and they sent me to Cornell University.
Now, tell me about. I mean, it's 1943. I mean, it's in the thick of it. I mean, already, and you know what you're getting into.
Yes.
So what were your feelings when you first got inducted? I mean,
at that time it was let me at 'em. Come on, join me army. Give me a gun and let me go. I'm going to get those sons of what, you know. And everybody was fighting to get into the service. Not like today, where they sometimes have a rather difficult time signing guys up for the service. But back then, everybody wanted to go.
Well, and I think one of the things is that back then you either had to sign up or more than likely you're going to get drafted anyway, right?
Oh yeah.
Goodness me! And you fought in the Battle of the Bulge, correct?
Yes, yeah. I was an infantry machine gunner right in the front line, just outside of Bastogne. Belgium during the battle, most of the Battle of the Bulge, and I was lucky. We went in, 200 of us in the infantry company, or a little less, because we already been fighting down the Czar Valley, and we lost a few people down there. The regular infantry company is about 200 men. But anyway, and during the Bulge, we went in with a full company. We came out about 6 weeks later. There's about 14 of us left from the original company.
Oh, my God.
Of that number, about 85 were killed, and most of the rest wounded. I was lucky. I got hit 3 times, but just minor flesh wounds. He just patched me up. I go back to the aid station. Doctor patched me up and said, "Can you still walk?" "Yeah, I can still walk." He said, "Well, get your tail back up there."
Well, and you were fighting pretty much the SS, right? I mean, this was the elite troops.
Yeah, it was the cream of the German army. We found out later when we started taking prisoners and that. These were mostly SS troopers in our area.
And when you were talking about the actual being in the thick of the fighting, you did say, you did shoot a lot of Germans. And last time we talked, you mentioned that perhaps, would you do anything differently if you could go back in time?
I don't think so. We had what we had to do with the circumstances at the time. It's easy to say that, well, you shouldn't have shot that man. I did. That's what we were there for.
Well, the thing about World War II, and you can talk about all the conflicts since then, but this was an existential threat to the United States and our way of life. Mm-hmm. And that's why, in my opinion, that you are the part of what we call the greatest generation.
Yeah.
I mean, what would this world be like if Germany won? Or Hitler had the atomic bomb, or whatever, and that is what. So whatever you're doing, you say, well, the end justifies the mean. You could do what you had to do, and it has to be psychologically hard on you to take somebody else's life, but it's necessary to be done, right? I mean, that's it. I mean,
I'll never forget the first man I ever shot, but there were dozens after that, so.
We'll have more with Jack Foy in the future. For the full show, check out NoNonsenseRoundtable.com. And now we're going to go to Dom's Tip of the Week.
Well, everybody, here's my car buying tip of the week. And this is right from my book, Don't Be Taken for a Ride, Know What Your Dealer Knows, and Drive Home Happy, which you can get on Amazon right now for, well, less than $20. And there's a certain something going on with the car business in that a dealer can say one thing and it doesn't mean what you expect it to say or mean. So let's take the word down, for instance. Down can mean, well, the money that you put down on your loan so you don't have as big a car payment every month. It could mean a direction. It could mean, well, you feel a little blue so you're down, or it could mean something like goose feathers, or in a lease it could mean that you still have to come up with a lot of money. So technically when a dealer says zero down, it may not actually mean no money out of your pocket. There could be thousands, and there could be, well, rebates that you don't qualify, and so forth and so on. It's explained in a lot of detail in my book, so if you want to know what that is, you can look in my book there. And the other thing is that when a dealer says, well, there's no security deposit, I don't know why that is a big deal, because you get that back anyway if you bring the car back in good shape. And if you don't bring it back in good shape, well, they're going to charge you for that anyway. Go to my website, Don't Be Taken. You find out more.
And now a message from Middle Finger Lakes' biggest dealer, Puppy McBottle Subaru. Everyone knows how Subaru is so dedicated to dogs and dog owners. So Puppy is making a bold offer. For each car bought this month, she is going to go beyond making a donation to a shelter. She is providing a free dog with every purchase. A dog will be in the back seat of your car upon delivery with a free food bag and bowl of water. Puppy says this goes beyond a donation to a dog shelter. This actually places homeless dogs in homes. See Puppy today. Disclaimer, no substitutions, no returns. Most dogs are house trained. Customers must buy optional pooper scooper package. Join us next week right here, and you can see the recorded interview now at nononsenseroundtable.com. And don't forget to order your book at don'tbetaken.com. That's all for now. Carry on.